Welcome, everyone. My name is Prashant Mohan, and I'm your host today. And I officially welcome you to this webinar. This is one of several webinars we delivered on this platform. And today, I'm so thrilled to have a special speaker from Informatica MDM product management team join us and share some of the great insights around provisioning tool and provide you a closer look into that. A few housekeeping items before we begin. The first one of our top questions we get from our audience usually in these webinars is, how do I get a copy of the presentation? So we got your back. You can get a copy of this presentation and request that from the attachment link section here of the Bright Talk channel. The PDF copy of this presentation, the full presentation is attached there, so you can get that. You can get it later too, so no hurry. A great news, the same URL which you use today to access this webinar can also be used to access this same webinar on demand. So if your colleague or a team member couldn't make it today, so we got your back as well there. So share the same link with them and let them listen to it when they're free. This Bright Talk platform also allows you to ask questions. So you can use the question button on the right side of the screen to ask a question anytime you feel like. So if there's a question you have right now, you can put that question right there and send it over to us. We will wait till the end of the presentation to answer any questions we have. We have about 45 minutes today to cover this topic. And if you can't get to the questions, we will certainly follow up with you on offline because we will know exactly who asked that question. So with that, let me formally introduce today's speakers. My name is Prashant Mohan. I'm a Director of Product Marketing here at Informatica, focused on master data management. I have met some of you during the recent Informatica World event and also customer advisory board meetings we arrange all around the world. I'm super thrilled to have Haziq Afzal join us today from the product management. Haziq, how are you?
Hey, morning, Prash. I'm doing well.
Can you give us a quick intro about yourself and talk to the audience as well?
Yeah, sure. I'm a product manager, of course, on the MDM team based in Toronto, Canada. Today I'm excited. I'm going to be talking about our MDM and not our MDM solution, and specifically talking about how we're making it easier using capabilities like the provision tool.
Wonderful, wonderful, Haziq. Thanks for doing this. And again, thank you so much for joining us today. In the next 45 minutes or so, we'll take you through the tool, and also we have planned a demo as well. I'll come back again at the ending to close the closing comments, but basically I will hand it over to Haziq to take us through the tool and provide us the demo. Haziq, all yours.
All right, perfect. So let's get started. So again, hello and welcome everyone to the webinar. I'm glad you can make it here today. So today we'll be taking a deep dive into the provision tool application. We will go over concepts such as business entity models and business entity views, and we'll look at how we can configure them using the said-mentioned tool. We will then also take a look at how layout configuration works in MDM and how we've tried to make that easier and easier for our varying enterprises. So let's get started. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this diagram and what it represents, and you don't have to worry, I won't spend too long on it. However, I do want to make one quick point before moving on, and that is this last part here where we talk about MDM for operational capabilities. Traditionally, many enterprises that have gone through the MDM journey have done so for analytical use cases or use cases that aren't real time. However, there is an increasing trend of operationalizing MDM and using it for real-time systems. There's an increasing number of enterprise users that are using the packaged MDM interfaces for their day-to-day businesses, and we've definitely recognized that trend. As such, with every release, there are four main areas of focus that we think about as a product group. First and foremost, we're constantly assessing and reassessing our user experience. We're set on making the interfaces easier to use for business users, to include pre-built widgets, and of course making everything role-based. Another area of focus is that we definitely understand that data enrichment is an important aspect of master data management. And with every major iteration, we look to enable more functionality and tools that allow for third-party data integration. Building value-added utilities for MDM is also a major area of focus for us. We have built tools such as the Layout Designer, which makes building layouts easier than ever before, and allows for quick prototyping, configuring, and publishing into your environments. And last but not least, we're always thinking about how we can provide faster time to value. This overarching theme resonates with all product development activities that we conduct. Now, to answer these major areas of focus and many more, we realized we needed to establish and create a fitting concept within MDM. And that concept comes in the shape of business entity models. So, business entities has become the primary modeling construct within MDM. It is still built on using the base objects from our previous modeling concept. However, there are some key distinctions that make using business entities more advantageous. And we'll take a look at those in this webinar. So business entities are basically an aggregation of base objects that have some sort of relationship with each other. So in this example of, customer business entity model, it's comprised of 3 base objects, just like before: person, address, and contact. Now, immediately, some of the benefits of having business entities is that they can be interfaced with without having to reference the underlying base objects. That gets abstracted away. As such, we have consistent API behavior with internal and external systems. And it becomes a lot more simplified for us to integrate these business entities using their services to downstream and upstream systems. Other benefits of using business entities include having access to newer interfaces. Going forward, all of our new functionality that we include in MDM is going to be business entity based. And with business entity models, we can also create subsets and transformations that we call business entity views. And we'll definitely go over those in today's webinar. And finally, we can use a provisioning tool to configure our business entity-based application. Now, one way to conceptualize business entities is by thinking of them as being tree-like. They have node types, they have certain distinct relationship between the nodes, and as you can see in this example with customer, I have nested fields. So I have customer, which is my root node, and then I have display name, which is a field at that root level. Then I can take that one step further and add a child node as well. And in this case, I've added, a child named contact. Based on that, I've added another child called address. Based on that, I've added more attributes such as state code and country code. Now, the fields that you see in blue underneath define the relationship that those nodes have. So in the example of field node, these are just attributes at the current node level. However, if you had, for example, a many node, like in the case of contact, what you're designating is that this has a one-to-many relationship between the parent node. And of course, the one node would have a one-to-one relationship with the parent node. The interesting node here is the reference node, which actually references a lookup table. So in the example of state code, you'll be referencing a list of states and not just random data. So we took this conceptualization and directly realized it within the UI in order to make it easier and more intuitive to use. And further, using the provisioning tool, you can define other attributes and properties of the business entity model very easily. So if I were to create a business entity model, it would be as simple as typing in the field and selecting the base object from the dropdown. If I wanted to do further configuration of that model, I would simply go ahead and click the respective field and select options such as making it searchable or sortable, and that would be it. So next, I'm going to switch over to a demo where I'm going to show how easy it is to actually create a business entity model in the provisioning tool. I'm going to add fields to that model, and this model is going to be called customer. There I will also add a child entity, and we'll go over some configuration options there as well. So, Prash, I just want to confirm you can see my screen, the shared screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. All right, perfect. So now I'm on the login page for the provisioning tool. I'm just going to go ahead and log in. Okay. I'm just going to select my database for which I want to do my configuration, and I'll just give it a moment to load. So in this tool, you probably have already noticed at the top here, there are almost two distinct sort of capabilities that you have, or configuration options that you have. Firstly, you are able to configure all things related to your business entity. So whether it has to do with modeling of that entity, transformations, or some sort of task configuration and other such functions, or whether you want to do some UI configuration, you can do that here as well. So you go to that drop down, and over there you can do configuration related to the application, to custom components that you want to create, and of course the layout designer, which we will also be going over in the webinar. So for this part of the demo, I'm going to go to modeling, and I'm going to be presented with this screen. I'm going to go ahead and click this drop down here and go over to business entities to see a list of business entities available in my database. So in this particular database, I have all of these business entities, and here's customer. So I already went ahead and just created the base template for customer. As you can see, I given it a name. So this is the internal referenceable name. The label is how it shows up in our interfaces and in our UI, and it's based on the party-based object. Here, as you can see, I have the four sort of distinct attributes that I was talking about. So you have fields, you have a section for child, section for one-to-one child, and one-to-many child. Sorry, I'm just getting a message that the screen isn't showing. Raj?
I would think that's mostly, some of you have asked that question. Usually we have seen it because of the network errors. I would suggest, try to get to a better network. Perhaps I know that's not a best answer, but I'm able to see it fine. So let's continue.
Okay. Yeah, there's definitely some questions saying that you're not able to connect or see anything. You think I should I'll give it just like a couple of seconds. Sometimes it just needs time to catch up because the screen keeps refreshing. So I'll just give it maybe 5 seconds and then I'll move on.
Yeah, it all depends on the network error, network capacity usually. In this platform, as you see, it's live streaming. So definitely get on a better network. But let's continue. We have 40 people or so.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, that's fair. I'll continue. So where was I? So yes, I was talking about the customer business entity model. So I have this structure here. So if I go ahead and click the field folder and expand that, so these are already some predefined system fields that come with the business entity. I'm going to go ahead and create my own field. So let's go ahead and click create. Here, I'm going to create the field last name. If I can just spell last name. Last name. And for the label, I'll just add a little space because it just looks better that way. I'm going to go ahead and select the column field here, and I'm going to select the column field, the last name column right here. If I go ahead and click apply, and just give it a second. MDM is sometimes a little slow. Pause for dramatic effect. Okay. My demo is crashed, of course. Of course. Sorry guys, just give me 1 second. I'm just going to relog back in, and hopefully it doesn't do that again. Prash, maybe what I'll do is I'll have this, I'll just restart my VM in the background. I'll move on to the next section in the PowerPoint, and then I'll just do the demo for stuff in one shot. And
Yeah, let's do that. I think that's fine.
Yeah?
Yep.
Okay. I'm just going to switch to the slides. If you give me a second, I'm just going to restart it on the other side real quick.
So some of you are still joining fresh, so I was seeing some counter there which was rising, but we're not taking a break or anything. We're just waiting for the system to refresh. This is the beauty of doing a live demo, so hopefully you can understand. But we'll come back to resume to the presentation from Hazik shortly.
Yeah, so while that's starting up again, I'm just going to go ahead and start talking about the next section. So ideally, what we would have done there is I would have shown you how seamless and easy it is to configure the business entity model and to attach fields, to attach child entities, and to attach nested child entities to the model. So we're just going to go ahead and move on to the next section, and then I'll go over that at the very end in just one shot. So let's start talking about business entity views. The need for business entity views arose as enterprises realized that they want to expose only certain data elements within the organization. And this wasn't only just for security implications, but also because a lot of enterprises realized that different lines of businesses have a different perspective of the same underlying model. So let's take, for example, this customer model that we have here. We have a base object person, address, contact, and perhaps even credit risk. So we have this, in this organization, we have a user role defined, let's say sales and marketing. And we have another role, risk assessment. Logically, these two distinct roles would have their own unique set of requirements or some sort of specialized requirements. So in the case of sales and marketing, let's say for our example, they only require read-only access to some contact information and to some address information. Whereas someone in a risk assessment group trying to understand customer profiles and data may require access to all data. They may require things like address validation and perhaps even credit risk information. So how does business entity views answer that? Well, business entity views is a modeling construct that is built on top of business entities. Additionally, each business entity view is defined as a set of unique APIs that interface and behave like the business entity model APIs. So as such, this allows us to use business entity views in place of the model, and any downstream or upstream system can use the views as if they were using the model itself. Business entity views also comes with the ability to define transforms and attach functions. And by that, so transforms are a mechanism by which we can map fields from the model to the view. Using this, we can define certain subsets of attributes or even move fields from places in the tree. So let's say from a grandchild node in the model and move it to the root in the view. Functions are very similar to how business entities already use them today. So we designate fields to be input-output parameters for externally defined functions. And the interesting thing to note here is that we can actually have functions per business entity view. So a lot of what's said there, so let's actually take a look at what that means. So on this slide, we have on the left-hand side business entity model, and on the right-hand side, we have the business entity view. So from the model, I've already went ahead and defined a transformation that takes fields from my model and puts them inside of the view. Now, if I were to take this one step further, what I could also do is take these two fields up here we could take these two fields up here, define a transformation or some sort of function that actually combines it and makes it into a display field. So if I were to put data into this and go next, we will see something like this. So in the model, if anyone had access to that, they would see, Joe Smith, and they would see a full address. Whereas if they were in the view, they would see J. Smith, they would see the field Toronto, Canada, and they would only see home phone. Now, let's put this into context with the business entity views and sort of the problem that we were talking about earlier. So the business entity model is this complete model which has things like first name, last name, full address, home phone, email, and some sort of credit score, maybe for some sort of bureau. So the sales and marketing folks would see a view that just presents data to them, just the email data and home phone data. Perhaps this is only an online marketing campaign that they need this data for. Whereas someone in risk assessment, they not only do they have first name and last name in all the fields, they actually have functions that take these fields, validate that the address is correct, validate that the scores are up to date, and things of that sort. So at this point, I'm going to switch over to the demo again. And Prash, are you there?
Of course.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm getting comments that people aren't hearing me.
I think we're fine. I can hear you well. Yeah.
Okay. All right. No problem. Before I switch over my screen, I'm just going to verify that things are up and running. I do have one more session yes. And then another third piece of the demo, so maybe we'll just do everything all at once. If you just give me 1 second. Okay, yeah, so I'm going to be switching over to the demo. I think things are looking okay. So we're back into that screen where we were looking at the business entity model. So here I have the customer business entity model selected. And here is the field node that we were talking about earlier. I'm just going to go ahead and click it. And here's the last name field that I added earlier. So before I show you how to do the transformation, I'm just going to quickly add one child entity to this. So I'm going to go ahead and click Create. I'm going to go here, and let's just add something called address, and do that. And we will also reference the party based object, and I'm going to go ahead and click Apply. And hopefully this time, it takes less than 5 seconds. Oh, you know what it might be? My laptop might be in power saving mode. Okay, yeah, I just plugged my laptop in and it went a lot faster. So we're going to go ahead and go to address. So this is the name of the child entity. If I wanted to add, for example, the state reference, I would just go ahead and click here. Go ahead and click Create. Or let's do country, and then I would just go ahead and click look up country, and that would be how I would define a reference entity within this child. So as you can see, I've very easily added a lot of attributes to this business entity, and I can continue to do so through this interface. So now I'm going to switch over to the transformations and show how those are defined. So again, I would go to business entity here, and then under modeling, I would then go and click transformations. Here, as you can see, there are a lot of different ways and directions you can define transformations. And this is so, you have your mapping going not only from the model to the view, but also when you do actions on the view and how they translate back to the model. So it's important to define them both ways. For this demonstration, we're just going to look at business entity, the model to the view. So I'm going to go ahead and click Create. And the convention we're using here is just the model name, and you're free to use whichever one you'd like, to what it is, so the customer view. And then from the drop-down, I'm just going to go ahead and select the view, customer view, and go ahead and click Apply. Then here, I'm going to go ahead and click Transform or Transformation, click Create, and we'll just give it a name for, in this case, we can just give it, let's say, last name, right? And then we'll go to Type, and then, so we can choose the type of transformations. So first I'll show you what direct is. So direct is just a one-to-one mapping certain fields. Click this button here and select, for example, my last name, the field that I just created. Click Select. So that's how it shows up in the inside of the model, and this is what it will translate to inside of the view. Oh, my apologies. I actually didn't publish, so that's why it didn't update the view yet. So we'll just quickly fix that, and we'll just click first name, and then we can transform that to first name there. And obviously, I would change that to first name. Now, if I were to create a transformation from the model to a function, what I would do is instead of clicking a direct, I would go ahead and click cleanse. So I'm just going to discard all that I did there, create another transformation, and we'll just say function for now. We'll go ahead and click type, and we'll click cleanse. Once we click cleanse, we should have a list of cleanse libraries available to us as they've been defined outside of the externally inside of MDM Hub. So I can go ahead and click something, for example, like address doctor. I can pick a function that I want to use. So let's add address doctor here. And then here, I have access to all of the parameters that are part of this function. And it's just a matter of selecting the respective fields and assigning them to those parameters, both for input, and then if I keep scrolling down, for output. So where they will get written inside of the view. And that's it for transformations. I'm going to now switch back to the slides. And so we just talked. Yeah, sorry.
Perfect. Yeah, it is in the screen mode if you want to get a confirmation.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, just finding my screen. There it is. Okay. Now, so I apologize about the mixing the two demos up into one screen, but so I'll just try to recap both of what we did. So first, what we did was we created the customer model for which we defined a field. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to publish that field, so it didn't show up in the transformation. But had I done that, when I opened up the transformation field, I would have been able to take the field from the model and map it directly to a field in the into the view. Now we're going to move on to layout configuration. So before we jump straight into the layout designer, let's sort of just revisit the problem that we were talking about earlier of having specialized requirements for data access. Now, as far as business entity views are concerned, they're able to sort of help us recognize that we need specialized access at a data level. However, if you take that argument a little bit further, one could also argue that these distinct roles would require distinct interfaces as well. And that's where this new capability within MDM comes into play. So new in MDM 10.2, we've added the capability to have multiple layouts for single records. So you can view records with varying perspectives. And not only that, you can configure those layouts for specific roles. And on top of that, you can even configure those layouts for specific contexts. So for example, if I was creating a record versus whether I was viewing that record in my inbox or whether I was just viewing the record on data view, I can have distinct layouts for that. So let's take a look here. I have this layout called Detailed Overview, and it is of this person called Albert Chan. From this layout, I see, a varying information. I can see what his cell phone number is. I can see what his salary information is. I can even include something like a Twitter feed, just to read what this person might be up to, what are some of the things that he's talking about in the conversations he's having. Now, if I was someone or user role or someone in the enterprise who didn't care about this particular information, what I can actually do is go ahead and select this drop-down at the top. And this drop-down gives me access to all of the layouts that I had been assigned. So in this case, I have things about primary relationship. I can have an account overview, as well as all of the other screens that were used in the past, such as the matches screen, the extra screen, and the history screen. I can select all of those from this drop-down as well. So in this example, I'm going to go ahead and click one of the layouts, which is just to understand not necessarily the business information of this record, but more about like the underlying system information. For example, when was this record created? When was it last updated? Is there perhaps a delete by date for this record? And even information such as, what were like the source systems that made up this record, and how did it come to be? Now, managing and creating all of these records, not only for the different business entity models, but for the different business entity views, and not only for that, but for the different user roles and the different contexts, can be a tedious exercise. Not to mention, creating just one layout sometimes is can cause a lot of problems if you don't have the proper tools. So that's where Layout Designer comes into play. It's a quick and easy layout configuration tool that allows you to simply drag and drop the business entity components. So these are the fields and attributes of the model or the view onto a canvas. On top of that, we have included pre-built widgets and also the capability for you to define your own widgets or components, with respect to your organization and your enterprise, that then you can just simply drag and drop and reuse for your different layouts. This allows us to create, complete 360 views of our record, and it allows for better, insightful decision making. So let's take a look at some of the screens or the 4 steps really that take to make a layout, and then I will switch over back into the provisioning tool where I will go through it again step by step. So on the first screen, what I see on the left-hand side are all of the business entities, again, part of my organization. And then under each of those business entities, I will see what are all the layouts that have been defined. To start off the layout visit process, I would just go ahead and click, start create layout, and I'll be welcome to the first step. In this first step, what I need to do is define my layout properties, such as giving a layout name, providing a description. For the dropdown, I can even define an icon here so it's easy for me to reference, and of course, selecting the business entity type. Under each business entity type, if you click the little arrow, you can also see all of the business entity views that have been defined for that model, and you can build layouts on those as well. Clicking next takes me to the define purpose step, where I can define for which user role am I actually making this layout. So is it for everyone in the organization? Is it for specific administration use? Is it for data stewards only? And things of that sort. Currently, the context that this layout editor tool allows us to define for are the create or the edit context. So create is when you are actually creating a brand new record. Is this layout supposed to show up then? Edit is when you are viewing an existing record, and selecting that would enable this layout for that context. As we iterate on this product and on this utility, we're adding more and more places where you can actually configure the layout. So for example, is this a search preview? Is this in task inbox? And those capabilities are coming very soon. Step 3 is where you define the template of the page. So this refers to, the column layout, the row layout. How do you want your canvas to look like? And this is a very simple step. You select one of the pre-built templates, and you move on to the final step. Now, this step is where you do all of your designing. So all of your components are on the left-hand side, and your canvas is on the right. So from the left, you pick your components. So for example, if I pick the business entity component, I drag it over onto the right. Then clicking the gear icon at the top, I can go ahead and then define further, one step further, what are all the fields, and what are all the layout of the field and ordering of the field. On top of that, I can go ahead and pick out-of-the-box widgets that we include. So something like match records or source systems related records, widgets that have traditionally been part of the MDM solution are available there as well. So you drag and drop that into a place on the canvas, and if those widgets support some sort of configuration, they will be available through the drop-down, and you can go ahead and select that drop-down and pick the configuration that you want. And of course, we have the place for custom widgets. So in our example, we have included LinkedIn and Twitter, or even some sort of data as a service provider. But this section really is for you to define your own widgets and components, to create your own reusable pieces that you can then easily drag and drop onto this canvas and then use for your layouts. And as this is the final step, you would go ahead and click publish, and this layout will be validated and published. So now I'm going to demo those 4 steps. I'm going to go ahead and switch my screens.
So Hazik, while you log into that demo screen, I just want a quick time check here. We have 10 more minutes to go. Hopefully we can finish it by then. I have a couple of questions here, which I see. I will answer one of them maybe in the meantime. The one question is about how about user exit implementations in the business entities. So the answer to that is we don't support user exits in the same way as we did in the subject areas-based IDD screens before. So instead, what we have introduced in 10.2 is an ability to call out the external functions where you really need them. But first you have to take a close look at the functionality that is available out of the box with the business entities, the business entity views, and the business entity transformations, together with the data quality rules to see if we can achieve that out of the box. And that will be a best way to go about that. So that's one question I answered. I do see a few more questions. Keep them coming, but we'll resume back to Hazik for now. Hazik?
Cool. And just off that, we'll, of course, we'll try to follow up with you guys on the questions, just because of the time constraint here. So I'm going to go ahead and click the UI configuration dropdown. As I mentioned before, I have access to some other utilities, but for our purposes, we're only going to look at the layout designer for now. So I'm going to go ahead and click that here. As I mentioned before, on the left-hand side is where we have all of our business entities. So I'm going to go ahead and select my business entity customer, and as you can see, there's no layout for it defined yet. So we're going to go ahead and create our view. I'm going to call this layout customer overview. Just an overview of what the customer has. So this layout name is for the purposes of this system here. The unique label is the label for the dropdown. So if you wanted it to be called in the dropdown something else, you could put that here. I'm going to go ahead and select the customer business entity. And there's my customer view, which is I defined, and I could select that as well. But I'm just going to make it for the model itself, and I'm going to go ahead and click next. In this example, in this instance, I have these user roles defined in my system. I can make this for anyone. I can make it for manager, administrator, or data steward. I'm going to go ahead and just create it for anyone. Everyone should have access to this. Next, I can select when I want this layout to show up. So I'm going to say this is just for when you are editing the entity or when you're viewing the record. Clicking on the next step takes me to templates. I like this template because it has an adequate number of rows and columns, so I'm just going to go in and select that. And then finally, I'm at the final step. So in this step, like I mentioned before, on the left-hand side, we have all of our draggable components, and we have a canvas on the right. And the canvas represents how these things will fit together and look like on your layouts. So I'm going to go ahead and select the business entity component and drag it here. And here, as you can see, I have the different configurations for the business entity. So to define a new one, I just click the gear icon, and I get this screen. Now, I'm going to go ahead, come down here and find my fields. So, I want first name here, and I want last name here. I actually don't want 3 columns, so I'm just going to go ahead and pick 2. And I don't want navigation fields on my layout either. And I want the address child node here. I can give this a name. We'll just give it a customer overview with child. Just a name so we can reference it in the drop down here. And I'm done defining what my business entity components will look like. Additionally, if I wanted to add more widgets, so for example, I wanted to see source system information of this record, I could put that here. And if I wanted to see similar records, I can drag that on top of source systems and have that here. Additionally, if I wanted something like something to reference the address information here and present to me a Google map of it, I can do that here. And these are just all custom defined widgets that I have access to. I'm just going to put in related task here, and this widget will show me any sort of task associated with this record when I view this layout. And now it's just a matter of, let's just select a configuration. I can click save, and it would I just have to click publish, and this layout will be deployed. So switching back to the slides, let's quickly recap what we've discussed today, and let's see where we are. So essentially what we talked about today was this distinct problem sometimes within enterprises, where you have the need for not only specialized access to data, but also specialized interfaces. Because we realize that one model or one giant chronological model is not sufficient for all of the different perspectives and lines of businesses within an organization. So in order to answer those needs, what we did is create this concept and build on this concept called business entities. Business entities is a concept that is derived off of base objects, which allows us to reference like specific data fields. We can define business entities and access to business entities and business entity views specific to user roles. And from there, we can go one step further and even define the interfaces for those specific roles as well. In today's demo, I was able to show you using the provision tool how easy it has become to use to create a customer model, how easy it is for you to create a business entity view, and not only just a business entity view, but the mapping between the business entity view and the model, and the transformations and functions on top of that. The ability to now configure layouts has become easier, and as we evolve the product, we're making it easier and easier and adding more and more capabilities. We're definitely always reassessing how our interfaces and user experience is, and we think the layout designer goes a long way in delivering that promised user experience. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your time. Apologies about the network issue that we're having earlier, and I'll hand it over to you, Prash, for concluding remarks.
Thanks, Hazik. That's great. So I do see a few more questions here. Maybe I can take one more question here before I close off. One of the question is around the intent of the Informatica MDM suite. So the question basically says, is the intent of the Informatica MDM suite to serve as the interface for workers or the manager, validator, brokers for data mastering? So the answer to that is pretty simple, right? It can be. If you don't have already have an interface that those users are using today, yes. Alternatively, if those users already have a business interface, you can use MDM services to call MDM from that business interface and search before you create master data. So that's a very common use case which we see customers follow. For example, large enterprises that have consumer-facing web portals that interact with MDM directly through services. And there are other examples where point of sales and point of check-in systems talk also directly to MDM, or from Salesforce even, for that matter. So we have a number of examples of customers using Data Director to directly onboard data into MDM as well. And both Customer 360 and Supplier 360 applications we provide today on top of MDM have user interface for providing customer and supplier onboarding screens as well. So certainly, I mean, it all depends on how you use or how you are creating data. You can either use MDM user interface or you can use services to do that. So that's a quick answer there. But we do have a few more questions. We probably follow up in an email after this webinar concludes to answer those questions. But thank you, Hazik, for your great presentation and demo. Thanks for all the attendees who were actively participating and asking questions. Hope you found this webinar extremely useful. As a follow-up to this, you will get an email from us which will have the recording link, which will allow you to see on-demand version as well. You can share with your colleagues if they're not able to attend this. With that, I would like to conclude. And Hazik, wonderful job today. So thanks for bringing your expertise here and sharing this with the audience.
Of course. Thank you, Prash. And again, thank you very much for everyone who attended. And please, keep your questions coming. We'll definitely get back to you soon.
Yeah, and certainly rate us as well. The platform allows you to provide a rating to us. We certainly appreciate any comment or feedback you can provide us through that platform. We certainly appreciate your feedback, so it will help us improve the next delivery even further. And finally, don't forget to get a copy of the presentation from the attachment tab. And with that, this webcast will now disconnect. Thank you very much for your time, and have a great weekend.
All right, thank you. Bye.